What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Cap Report. UFC 267 is upon us, and this is a big one. This is a stacked card. We got two title fights as Blachowicz defends his light heavyweight title against Glover Teixeira. On top of that, we have interim bantamweight title between Petr and Sandhagen. We see the return of Khamzat Chimaev, and we also see a real banger between Dan Hooker and Islam Makhachev. On top of that, there's a couple other fights. This is a really good card. So without further ado, we're gonna get into the video. Just some light analysis and some predictions. So to start off the card, we have in the light heavyweight division, 7th ranked Magomed Ankalaev versus 8th ranked Volkan Oezda. Ankalaev is a minus 310 favorite, which, I agree with. Despite these guys being ranked 7 and 8, I don't really think it's going to be that close of a fight. Ankalaev's on, a 5 or 6 fight win streak, and I think of those, 4 have been finishes. Meanwhile, Oezda, he's only won 2 of his last 5, and those 3 losses, to be fair, have come against, top 5 guys in the division. Yuri Prochaska, which was his last loss, Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes. And so, to be fair, when he goes against the top of the division, can't blame him so much for losing. It's just he's sitting probably around where he should be in the rankings. But Ankalaev is, still has upwards to go. And the other kind of scary thing is, of his last 4 losses, 3 of them have been finishes. So I'm looking at this fight, and there's a chance Ozdemir wins. If he does, I think it's probably a decision, but odds are I'm going Ankalaev by a finish. I'm saying he's probably going to get about a 3rd round TKO. If you're looking at the future of the light heavyweight division, this is a good fight to pay attention to because Ankalaev has the potential to be a future champion. I don't think it will be within this era of Blachowicz though, and it makes sense that they put this as the opening fight of this card because you're seeing 2 veterans fight out for the title who in 2-3 years probably won't be fighting in this division anymore. And Ankalaev is one of those guys who is seen as said the potential to have a future champion. For the next fight, we have in the welterweight division the return of Khamzat Chimaev, and this is an interesting one as he will take on 11th ranked Jingliang. And Khamzat was a pretty big story last year in 2020. I think he broke the record, the fastest turnaround for a fight in UFC history, as he fought about 2 fights in the span of 10 days, or he fought once and then 10 days later he fought again, and one was at welterweight and one was at middleweight, and then he fought Gerald Meerschaert, and he beat him in under 20 seconds by TKO or knockout or something. So it was a pretty wild run for him, and that lasted he fought July 16th and then July 26th and then in September, and then he was set to fight Leon Edwards, which was kind of a crazy turn of events, but he ended up getting COVID. He dealt with a really bad case of it. There was a point where he was thinking about even retiring, but he's back now, so that should be interesting. I'm not, as high on the Khamzat hype train as everyone else is. I think with that Meerschaert fight, you could see Meerschaert was not mentally there for that fight. Not to write off Khamzat's win, because that sounds like what I'm doing. It still was, a solid win. That's a guy who's been in the UFC for a long time. He's got a lot of wins, a lot of fight time, all that kind of stuff, experience. Which is an interesting point, right? Because that's the argument I would use for Jingliang against Khamzat Chimaev, is that he is a much more experienced fighter. He's fought a much higher level of talent and experience. Just looking at this, let's see. Well, he's only on a 1-fight win streak, right? As he last fought, he beat Santiago Ponzinibbio by TKO or knockout, really. But he had lost to Neil Magny before that. But looking at this way, he's won a lot of fights in the UFC. Not only that, he has a lot of finishes in the UFC. And he's a ranked fighter, and he's beat name talent in the UFC. Up till now, this is Khamzat's biggest test. And the crazy thing to me is that Khamzat's a minus 590 favorite. I get in the sense of, at least he appears to have that striking. We haven't seen much of him. All the fights he's been in, he's completely dominated and controlled. He's I think he has more knockouts than he has strikes absorbed or something in the UFC. He's got some crazy stats just because he's only had 3 fights though. Lee is going to be a big kind of step up in striking. Meerschaert, not the same level of striker, if we're being honest. That guy, he kind of froze in the moment. Jingliang, at least from what I've seen, especially in the press conferences and stuff, in their face-off and all that, he seems to be up to the test. He's not phased. I don't think Khamzat's in his head at all. I don't think that this fight is true to those odds, right? I still think, sure, you can favor Khamzat just off of like the matchup style, but I'd say it's more of like a 60-40 favorite. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think he's 590. He's probably like, I'd say this should be closer to minus 200 if we're being honest, right? I think, yeah, he still provides the wrestling element that, you know, he could easily, I shouldn't say easily take it to the ground, right? But if he gets it to the ground, he can dominate possibly that way. Jingliang is not a big submission, you know, artist. Khamzat does have some finishes to his name, I think, or some submissions to his name. He has, I think, every fight he's finished so far. That being said, I think this will be a really good fight. As I said, I think the odds are way off in the terms. I don't think Khamzat should be that much of a favorite. I think this is very much a buying into his hype, and that he should be somewhere between like a minus 150, minus 200 favorite. This one's really hard for me to predict, and I don't know. Since I'm not on the Khamzat hype train that much, I'm gonna go with Jingliang by second round TKO. This one's not a super confident one. This is, I don't know, I feel like this is a very big step up in competition for Khamzat, and that, I mean, he has a path to victory, right? He can, I mean, his striking is good. Maybe he can win a striking fight here. I mean, his true path to victory would be, you know, get this fight to the ground and pound. He can either find a submission. He's a good grappler. You know what I mean? If he takes this fight to the ground, he will have the advantage. And there's multiple ways for him to win once he gets there. For Lee, he's got to keep it standing to win, right? But I think that he can. I mean, I think that there's a chance Khamzat, well, I guess there's one way to look at it. Khamzat maybe doesn't even try and take the fight to the ground unless he feels in danger. But I think Lee will, he'll find a TKO, find a knockout TKO second round. As I said, not a confident pick on this one. Moving on to the heavyweight division, in the next fight, we have 5th ranked Alexander Volkov coming off a loss against Cyril Gane versus 8th ranked Marcin Tibura, and he's on a 5-fight win streak. This is an interesting fight. Volkov has about a 4-inch height advantage on Tibura, and he has about a 2-inch reach advantage. So theoretically, he has a good shot of keeping this fight standing. If he wants, he can probably try to maintain the distance, kind of poke from afar and hold out a decision, maybe catch Tibura coming in. If he's able to probably catch him on a level change. Tibura is the better of the two in terms of grappling. He's I believe a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he's a strong wrestler as well. So if he can get this fight to the ground, things will look good for him. But Volkov has pretty solid takedown defense. What is it? 70? No. He has 67% takedown defense, so that's looking good. Tibura's takedown accuracy is only about 45%, so not even half of his takedowns are hitting. I don't have a ton of thoughts on this fight. I think maybe it's a little more even than the odds. I really can see either guy winning. If Tibura's able to get this fight to the ground, he can probably win. I think either guy can win in a decision. Maybe there's a slight chance of Tibura getting a submission. There's a good shot this fight ends in a... There's a lot of ways this fight we're looking at. Either guy can win TKO, you can get submission, win for Tibura, or decisions for either guy. Ultimately, I'm looking at this, and I'm going to probably go with a win for... I'm going to go with Volkov by decision, but this is another fight that I think really could kind of lean either way. Moving on to the lightweight division, we have 5th ranked Islam Makhachev taking on 6th ranked Dan Hooker. Boy, is this a great fight. This is a really good one. This fight was actually originally supposed to be Islam Makhachev versus Rafael dos Anjos. That's a fight that they try to put together 2 or 3 times now, and it just keeps falling apart. But Dan Hooker, he's a real one. He steps up. He's the type of guy who'll fight anyone. He wants to beat the best, and so you got to fight the best. It's kind of crazy to me. Makhachev's a minus 650 favorite, but I'm assuming that's in part because of the late notice that Hooker's taking this fight on. I was talking to my friends, and my friend Lucas brought up this really good point that this fight is between two of the probably biggest kind of camps right now in the UFC, and in styles of the camps too. And that you have the Dagestani wrestlers versus the anti-wrestlers at City Kickboxing, right? You got Islam Makhachev, who I think he trains at AK sometimes, but he trains under Khabib's umbrella kind of fighters, and so they have that Dagestani wrestling style. And Dan Hooker, he's with City Kickboxing, so those guys train. That camp includes Adesanya and Volkanovski, so the middleweight champion and the featherweight champion. Very anti-wrestling in terms of they have to very often kind of train against that, because that's just the easy way to fight their style. So they've kind of built in a defense to it, right? And they're very feint based as well. This is an interesting fight when you start looking into the numbers too. Let's see, because Hooker has about 2-inch height advantage. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage, which should help him. The fight starts standing, and he's the better striker of the two, right? So he can kind of try and keep his distance. I don't think he'll be able to, right? And I don't think he necessarily wants to. He's going to try and look for a flying knee or something somewhere, right? Or try and catch Makhachev in a level change or something, right? Looking at the striking numbers is interesting too. As I said, Hooker's the better striker here, but that's not the strength of Makhachev, so it doesn't matter so much. Hooker, the thing that's a little concerning, right, is he takes a lot of unnecessary damage. He lands almost 5 strikes per minute, 5.95, but he almost takes 5 strikes per minute too, absorbs 5 strikes per minute at 4.66, right? And his accuracy is 48%, so under half. He hits under half his strikes. It doesn't so much matter, right? Like, if all you gotta do is hit him, right, got to get that one hit. Sometimes I knock a guy out, but it's a little concerning, right? Sometimes he takes damage or risks he doesn't have to, Hooker, and you just don't want to see that here. Makhachev, he lands about 2.24 strikes per minute, so about 2 strikes per minute. The crazy thing is he absorbs 0.77 strikes per minute, so he absorbs under a strike a minute. He rounds up, but theoretically it's under a round per minute, and he has 70% striking defense to Hooker's 52%. So it's a number's only one aspect of it, but they kind of lean toward Makhachev a bit. That's actually interesting. Makhachev's only got 65% takedown accuracy, but he, with those Dagestanis, they kind of just keep pushing those takedowns, and eventually they'll get them, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily matter so much that they get the first one; they just keep doing it until they can get it right. He averages three takedowns per 50 minutes, because sometimes that's all he needs to get you down. The interesting thing, Hooker has 80% takedown defense. Another interesting thing is Makhachev's on a 6-fight win streak. Hooker just got back into the win column. What was it? He fought actually on the last card, so beginning of October or end of September? I think it was end of September, with a win against Haqparast. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting avenues this fight could go. As I said, Makhachev's not the best striker. If Hooker can keep it standing, he'll have opportunities. That guy, he's called the hangman for a reason, right? If he can use feints a bit, he might be able to lure Makhachev into a level change and catch him. I feel like, I think I said this actually with his last fight too, with Chandler, even though Chandler doesn't necessarily use his wrestling so much. Makhachev is going to commit to a takedown at some point. So, unlike where with Chandler, that's how Chandler caught Hooker, was that he sold the fake takedown so well and caught him with his hands down. If Makhachev can get this fight to the ground, I think that, he'll probably win. I mean, both guys here have a path to victory. Hooker, it's going to be being able to kind of push off the takedowns, catch Makhachev. I mean, Makhachev's been finished before, right? So there's a chance to do it. He maybe can win a decision. I feel like if it goes to a decision, it probably will lean towards Makhachev if the fight goes the distance. Makhachev he can get a submission if he's able to get this to the ground. I think that this fight will probably go multiple rounds, and that at least one of the rounds Makhachev will get this fight to the ground. But I think that he might not be able to get Hooker to the ground in the first round. I think that Hooker might be able to keep it standing, win that first round. It might be that Makhachev wins the second, and then it's up to who can get the third, right? If Hooker is able to poke from a distance or kind of fend off the takedowns and just do enough damage to get by and get the win, or if Makhachev's able to take it to the ground and kind of just control the fight to the end, or even find a finish. I don't think Makhachev's going to find a finish on standing. I don't think he's going to knock him out. I don't think he's going to get a TKO if it's from striking, right? I think if he gets a TKO, it's going to be from controlling the fight on the ground, creating finding a position like the crucifix or something, and getting a finish that way. I don't think he's going to TKO Hooker otherwise. But yeah, this is a really interesting fight. Makhachev is what many people think will be a future champion too, so this is a really good test for him as well. I mean, it's really interesting looking at the records too. Makhachev 20-1 and Hooker's 21-10. Now looking at it, my pick for this fight, oh man, this is tough. I really want to pick Dan Hooker. I really do. The last time I picked him, it didn't pan out so well, and I was confident about that one too. I'm gonna lean Makhachev by decision, but don't be surprised if Hooker gets a TKO win. But my official prediction is going to be Makhachev by decision. Moving on to the co-main event in the bantamweight division, we have third-ranked Corey Sandhagen taking on the former champion and top-ranked Petr Yan. This fight was originally supposed to be Yan versus Sterling 2, but Sterling has surgery and he's going to be out for a bit. Jan still wanted a fight, and he said he'll take on anyone, and in comes Sandhagen. Jan is, coming off really, a 10-fight win streak. He's technically on a 1-loss streak because of the disqualification for Sterling, but that's kind of an iffy one. I mean, if we're being honest, he was going to win that fight. You know, the only reason he lost was because of disqualification. Which is still a loss, but you get what I'm saying. Corey Sandhagen was on a 2-fight win streak until he also is coming off of a loss against TJ Dillashaw, which I think that Corey Sandhagen won that fight. I think it was maybe a bad decision giving it to Dillashaw, but I think it was split, right? So it happens, but nonetheless, both these guys deserve to be here. Many argued that this should have been the original title fight when Cejudo retired way back when, or even after Jan beat Aldo for the title. That being said, yeah, this is a really interesting fight. Looking at the numbers, Sandhagen is 4 inches taller. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage. Should play into his advantage. I don't think Jan's fought anyone this kind of tall or lanky, so that should be interesting. He's gonna have to get inside. Both these guys are switch stance fighters. They switch a lot, honestly. They're very fluid within their striking in terms of what stance they're in. Looking at their, their numbers, both land about 6 strikes per minute. Sandhagen lands a little more, like 6.32 to 5.99. Jan has slightly better striking accuracy, 52% to 47%. Both guys absorb close to the same amount. Sandhagen at 4.05, Jan at 3.55, so Jan takes less damage, which is interesting because he's the type of guy that he's willing to take damage to get inside on you too. And then in terms of the defense, Jan's at 62% striking defense, Sandhagen's at 59%. And that's also interesting because Jan keeps really high guard. Looking at grappling numbers, Jan averages about 2 more takedowns, 2.14 to 0.74 to Sandhagen, 2 more takedowns a fight. He's got about 20% better takedown accuracy, 66% to 44%. His takedown defense is really good too, 90% to Sandhagen, 65%. Granted, I don't know if Sandhagen's gonna be looking for takedowns at all in this fight. I could see Jan doing it. I mean, he did it. He was having his way with Sterling in terms of, trips, throws, takedowns, whatever he wanted to do. Not that he's looking to get the fight on the ground, but just the opportunity presents itself, he kind of just takes it. Yeah, he's gonna want to push the pressure in this fight, get inside. He's willing to take damage to get inside too, which he does this thing a lot like Dustin Poirier, where he'll switch stances as he's moving in, kind of cutting in on distance. He'll step in, throw a power shot, switch stance basically, step in again and throw another a power overhand. And it'll be interesting to see how Sandhagen approaches that. Sandhagen's been a guy who's pretty good at kind of just avoiding pressure as it comes, getting his opponent to kind of just give up and then jumping back in. Sandhagen's really good kind of with playing with range, especially because of his length. It'll be interesting to see how that works. I don't think he should try out kind of all the flashy stuff in this fight. I think it's going to end up getting him kind of caught in some grappling exchanges, kind of like how I think it happened in the Dillashaw fight, where he would you try to do spinning backs or something, and he takes your back against the cage, right? And when you see that much control time, it kind of hurts you, especially on the judges' scorecards, right? And it costs him that fight, theoretically. I think with Jan, you gotta be careful too. If you start trying to throw all that kind of fancy stuff, he's gonna find an opening for it. That being said, Sandhagen should have some openings too in the striking game. Jan keeps a really high guard. His hands are up. It should leave his body vulnerable to body strikes if Sandhagen is willing to take them. And Sandhagen can deliver some pretty punishing body shots. He's kind of dropped guys off body shots before and found finishes through it. So I'll be interested to see if he can find that, especially as the fight goes. Looking at path to victory. Oh, also, Jan is a minus 235 favorite, which I'm not against. I could see this being maybe more of a minus 150. But looking at path to victory for Petr Yan, it's gonna be controlling the octagon, pressing forward, getting Sandhagen against the cage, and just landing punishment, you know what I mean? Getting inside, kind of wearing him down. And I think he can find a late round finish probably with that kind of style. If he gets into grappling exchanges, he'll probably be fine too. Kind of just having his way with Sandhagen. He'll probably take him down, but not follow him to the ground, as it's similar to his fight against Aljamain Sterling. I think he also can get a decision win. Looking at Sandhagen, it's going to be kind of, playing with the range, throwing a lot of kicks and body shots. I guess you have to be careful throwing the kicks, though. Jan could catch them, and that's going to, once again lead to trips and things like that. Be able to catch Jan with the kick like he did against, Marlon Moraes. As I said, body shots will be big, especially as the fight goes on, because Jan's a guy who gets better as the fight goes on. So if you're able to kind of gas him out by hitting body shots late, you can kind of take away that. Giving Jan a lot of looks will be important too. Jan's a guy who gets better as the fight goes on, because he also is kind of taking what you give him and adjusting to it. Sandhagen's also really interesting too. If the fight goes to the ground, I think that he can win that way. He's a guy who's always looking, what's his next step? What's his next move? When he's on the ground, he's always looking for submissions. I think that, you know what I mean, if this fight has hits the ground at all, you'll see like probably 2 or 3 different submission attempts from Sandhagen. He's really creative with his triangles too, so that will be interesting to see if he tries anything in that regard. So I could see, a path to victory is if the fight ends up on the ground, Sandhagen catches him late. Once again, in a late round, championship round, he catches him in a submission, especially if he's been punishing with body shots, that he might be able to catch you on like that. There's a chance he gets a TKO finish or a decision, right? That being said, my prediction is going to be Petrion by 4th round TKO. Moving on to the main event in the light heavyweight division, top-ranked contender Glover Teixeira takes on defending champion Jan Blachowicz. Now this is a good one too. These are both veteran guys who kind of earned their spot here. They're both riding big win streaks. I think 5 wins each for both of them. Jan's won, I think, 8 of his last 9. Looking at the numbers, pretty similar, both 6'2". Jan's got about a 2-inch reach advantage. They both land similar strikes per minute, 3.59 for Jan to 3.75 for Teixeira. Jan's a little more accurate, 49% striking accuracy to Teixeira's 47%. Big difference is strikes absorbed. Teixeira absorbs about one significant strike more per minute than Blachowicz does, 3.84 to 2.79. Teixeira averages about 1 more takedown. He's got about 40% takedown accuracy, Glover Teixeira, and Jan Blachowicz is about 65% takedown defense. So I think that there's a good shot that Glover can get this fight to the ground. When you look at it, right, this is a fight that Jan wants to keep standing. Glover wants to get this fight to the ground, right? Jan's going to be the better fighter standing. And in the clinch, it's kind of funny the similarities between Jan Blachowicz and Petrion in that regard, I guess. But yeah, Blachowicz is going to want to keep this fight standing. Teixeira wants to get this fight to the ground if he's got a good chance of winning. Both these guys have interesting paths to victory. If Blachowicz can keep standing, I think that he can knock out Teixeira. He's got, I think, a bit of a different level of power to some of the other guys Teixeira's fought and kind of outlasted in terms of taking their strikes and eventually getting the fight to the ground. But even if it goes to the ground, I think it can be pretty competitive. I think this fight will be competitive wherever it goes. Blachowicz is, I think people don't realize, is like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I mean, Teixeira is as well, but it's just something that I don't think is considered always. Let's see, Blachowicz is about a -300 favorite, and I think that's fair. I think this is his fight to lose. Looking at past victory for him, keep it standing. Teixeira is the guy who can really kind of just keep taking the damage. He's not the greatest striker, but he's a good striker. He's a good striker, just not the greatest, right? There will be openings for him. The big thing for him will be defending the takedowns. I think actually a really interesting way that this fight might go is if Jan's able to defend a takedown, kind of get into the clinch from there, or clinch up with Teixeira after that, kind of push him away. Jan's is like really dangerous in these kind of close range situations. Like he adapts his strikes really well to like to the range. He's got really good range kind of distance management within his striking, and so I could easily see him maybe getting like a Luke Rockhold type knockout where he defends takedown, initiates the clinch, kind of pushes him away, and lands a big left hand on Teixeira. Don't know if that will necessarily happen, but that's like a path I could see happening. He's got devastating like body kicks as well. I'd be interested to see how much he uses that. If he gets to the ground, I think he's good enough to survive. I mean, Jan's path to victory would be he can win a decision, probably a finish standing. Looking at for Glover, for his path to victory, it's going to be around the path of either. There's one similar I could see is maybe the Anthony Smith fight. If Jan's able to if Jan puts a lot of pressure early on but can't knock Teixeira out, he could gas like he did in the Adesanya fight. Granted, that was a much more technical fight. He could gas and Glover take over late. That's been a pretty solid strategy for Glover over the years lately. But I could see a very similar path to that Anthony Smith fight where Smith was just laying it out early, gassed out, and then Glover took over late. Maybe that happens, but I think the difference is that Blachowicz has a different level of power than Anthony Smith that I don't think Glover can really take the same kind of shots from Jan that he did from Anthony Smith. But getting this fight to the ground will be big, if he can even outlast him, get to later rounds where he's tired, get him to the ground, then he can find a submission. But I think that's really his main thing. Maybe he can eke out a decision, but I don't think he's a good enough striker I don't think he's comparable enough as a striker to Jan to pull out a win like that. My prediction for this fight is going to be Jan Blachowicz by 3rd round knockout. That's going to be all for this video. I thank you all for watching. Feel free to leave a like, drop a comment, tell me what you think of the fights, your predictions, what you think of my predictions, anything like that. Other than that, I appreciate y'all. Once again, let's enjoy these fights. Granted, I'm going to be working during them again.